They didn't even send a congratulations text. I stood in that garden in my wedding dress, fairy lights twinkling overhead like stars I'd wished on as a child, and stared at the empty chairs reserved for my family. The white ribbons I'd tied to those seats fluttered in the evening breeze, mocking me with their pristine beauty. Liam squeezed my hand, his touch warm and reassuring, but my eyes kept drifting to that hollow space where my parents, my brother, should have been sitting. "You have me," Liam whispered, pulling me closer. "You have my family now. They're the ones who lost out." I forced a smile and nodded, but inside, something crystallized into a cold, hard truth. While we exchanged vows under the Madison sky, while I promised to love and cherish the man who actually saw me, my family was posting Instagram stories from some fancy restaurant across town. They'd told my mother they had an important business dinner that couldn't be moved, important enough to miss their daughter's wedding, apparently. The realization didn't just sting, it carved itself into my bones. 7 days later, I posted the photo that would change everything. Me, standing next to my new Tesla Model S Plaid in electric blue, arms crossed confidently, custom license plate reading Aurora V gleaming in the sunlight. I'd worked for this moment, this symbol of everything I'd built without them. The car cost $120,000, and every dollar represented a dream they'd never bothered to ask about. My phone stayed silent for 3 days, then Eleanor called. "Aurora!" My mother's voice crackled through the speaker, sharp and demanding. "Where did you get that car?" "We need to talk. Family meeting. Tomorrow morning at the house. Don't you dare say you can't make it." I sat in my kitchen, still in my pajamas, coffee growing cold in my hands. The woman who couldn't find time for my wedding suddenly had urgent business with me. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd ignored my successes, my achievements, my actual life, but flashed some money, and suddenly I was worth their attention. "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll be there." But as I hung up, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't going to be the reunion they expected. The drive to my childhood home the next morning felt like traveling back through layers of old wounds. Every street corner held a memory of being overlooked, dismissed, forgotten. I'd grown up in this house, but I'd never really lived here, not the way Ethan had, bathed in attention and praise from day one. Growing up, I collected moments of being overlooked like other kids collected baseball cards. At 8, I showed my mother my drawing selected for the school art show, while she arranged Ethan's Little League trophies. "That's nice, honey," she said absently. The drawing ended up in the trash the next day. When I was 9, I landed the lead role in The Little Princess. The night of the performance, I scanned the audience for my family. They weren't there home helping Ethan with math homework. I performed to thunderous applause from everyone except the people who mattered most. My 16th birthday remains the most painful memory. I woke expecting something, a card, acknowledgement, anything. Instead, Eleanor drove Ethan to his college interview. That evening, they sat around our kitchen table laughing about his day while I ate dinner alone in my room, tears dripping onto my pizza. Those moments taught me that love in the Vance household was conditional, finite, and apparently reserved exclusively for golden boy Ethan. So I stopped expecting it. I stopped asking for it. I channeled all that yearning into something else entirely. Art became my salvation, specifically filmmaking. Miss June Ellis, my multimedia arts teacher, introduced me to video production during my junior year, and suddenly I found my voice. "Art isn't just about painting pretty pictures," she told our class one day. "It's about storytelling. It's about making people feel something." I borrowed the school's ancient camcorder and started experimenting. I filmed everything: autumn leaves dancing on the sidewalk, my worn Converse sneakers puddle jumping through Madison's rainy streets, our neighbor's golden retriever destroying his favorite tennis ball. I taught myself editing software, stayed up until 3 in the morning perfecting transitions and color grading. My first real success came with a 3-minute film called Small Things. It was a meditation on finding beauty in the mundane, scored with music I'd composed on GarageBand. The piece won first place in our county's student media competition, complete with a $1,000 prize and a feature in the local newspaper. I called Eleanor immediately, practically vibrating with excitement. "Mom, I won! The film I've been working on won first place. This is huge." "That's wonderful, Aurora," she said in that distracted tone I knew so well. "Ethan has his mock trial championship this weekend, so we're going to be really busy." Patrick's response was even briefer. "Good for you, kiddo. Dad's got work." Ethan just shrugged when I tried to tell him. "Cool." I went to the awards ceremony alone, sat in the auditorium, surrounded by families cheering for their kids, accepted my trophy with a smile that felt painted on, and drove home in silence. That night, I started my YouTube channel, Aurora's Lens, and uploaded Small Things. If my family wouldn't celebrate my victories, maybe strangers on the internet would understand what I was trying to create. College was my escape. Northwestern's film program, working nights at a coffee shop to survive. Those 4 years transformed me. Professor Alan Burke became my mentor, pushing me to explore challenging themes. My YouTube channel grew steadily, Freelance gigs followed. Senior year brought my biggest break. Invisible Voices, my documentary about homeless veterans, won the National Student Digital Media Competition $10,000 and major platform promotion. I called Eleanor from the awards reception. "I won, Mom. The national competition." "That's fantastic, Aurora. Your brother just closed a really big case." Even my biggest achievements were footnotes to Ethan's ordinary Tuesdays. After graduation, I founded Spark Vibe Studio. The first year was brutal 18-hour days, ramen dinners, a studio apartment doubling as my office. The turning point came when Sylvia Chen invested $200,000 after seeing my work. Within 3 years, we were producing viral content reaching millions monthly. When TikTok offered to acquire Spark Vibe for $18 million, I signed without hesitation. The healing began when I met Liam Hayes at my favorite coffee shop. He was sketching mechanical diagrams, and when our eyes met after I knocked over my chair during a photo shoot, he laughed not at me, but with genuine amusement that made me laugh too. Liam was a renewable energy engineer who actually listened when I talked, asked thoughtful questions, remembered details from weeks-old conversations. 6 months later, he proposed beside Lake Mendota at sunset. "Aurora, you're home to me. Will you marry me?" I said yes, through happy tears, feeling truly chosen for the first time. Planning our wedding should have been pure joy, but the shadow of my family's indifference hung over everything. I sent elegant invitations 3 months in advance. I called Eleanor personally to make sure they'd received theirs, tried to sound casual when I asked if they were planning to attend. "Of course, honey," she said. "We wouldn't miss it." But as the date approached, the excuses started trickling in. Ethan had an important case. Patrick was dealing with a difficult client. Eleanor mentioned something about a business dinner that had been impossible to reschedule. Each excuse felt like a small cut, but I told myself they'd come through when it mattered. The morning of my wedding, I woke up with butterflies of anticipation. This was my day. The day I'd dreamed about since I was a little girl playing dress-up. Surely they wouldn't miss this. Surely this once, I would be the priority. The ceremony was set for 6 in the evening at a historic mansion with sprawling gardens. As guests began arriving, I kept checking my phone, expecting a text with their ETA. Liam's family bustled around, making sure everything was perfect, his mother adjusting my veil, his sister touching up my lipstick. "They'll be here," I kept telling myself. "They have to be here." 5:30 came and went, 5:45. I asked the wedding planner to wait 5 more minutes, then 5 more. Finally, Liam took my hands and looked into my eyes. "Aurora," he said gently, "it's time." I walked down that aisle alone, past the row of empty chairs I'd reserved for my family, past the white ribbons that looked like surrender flags in the evening light. Liam's expression when he saw me was worth everything: pure love and admiration and promise. His family cheered as I passed. His mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. But there was still that hollow ache where my parents' proud faces should have been. We exchanged vows I'd written from the heart, promised to choose each other every day, kissed as the sun set behind us while our friends cheered. It was beautiful. It was perfect. It was incomplete. The reception was a blur of congratulations and dancing and cake cutting. Every time someone asked where my family was, I smiled and made some excuse about work obligations. Liam never left my side, his presence a steady anchor in the swirl of emotions I was trying to process. Later that night, as we were packing up the last of the gifts, I checked my phone. No missed calls. No texts. No acknowledgement that their daughter had gotten married that day. I found Eleanor's Facebook page and nearly threw my phone across the room. There she was, posting pictures from some upscale restaurant downtown with Patrick and Ethan and his wife Serena. The timestamp showed they'd been there during my ceremony. The caption read, "Lovely evening out with the family." The family. Apparently, I wasn't included in that definition. Liam found me crying in our hotel bathroom, still in my wedding dress, mascara streaking down my cheeks. He didn't say anything, just held me while I sobbed out years of accumulated hurt. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "This should be the happiest day of my life." "It is," he said firmly. "Don't let them take that away from you. Aurora, you have a family now. You have me. You have my parents, my sister, all the people who love you enough to show up." He was right, of course. But it still felt like losing something I'd never actually had. The next few years were the happiest of my life, despite that persistent ache. Liam's family embraced me completely. His mother called me her daughter, his father taught me to golf badly, his sister and I became genuine friends. We had holiday traditions, inside jokes, the kind of easy affection I'd watched other families display from the outside. Meanwhile, Spark Vibe continued growing. The streaming platform TikTok approached us about an acquisition deal when our content started generating massive engagement numbers. After months of negotiations, I sold Spark Vibe for $18 million. $18 million. The number felt surreal, even after all the legal documents were signed and the money was transferred to my accounts. I'd built something from nothing, created value from creativity, succeeded beyond my wildest teenage dreams. I sent a photo of the signed acquisition papers to my parents, expecting something. Surprise, pride, acknowledgement that their daughter had just become a multimillionaire through her own hard work. Eleanor's response came 2 days later. Congratulations, dear. Ethan just made partner at his firm. That was it. No questions about how I'd built the company, no curiosity about my future plans, no celebration of this massive milestone. Just a pivot back to Ethan's achievements, as always. I decided to stop reaching out. If they wanted a relationship with me, they could make the effort. I focused on my marriage, on figuring out what came next professionally, on the life I was building with people who actually cared about my success. After paying off debts and taxes, I had about $15 million left. The first thing I did was buy Liam his dream motorcycle, a vintage Indian Scout he'd been admiring for years. The second thing I did was purchase the Tesla Model S Plaid I'd been wanting, fully loaded in electric blue metallic paint. The Tesla wasn't just a carrot, was a statement. A symbol of what I'd accomplished without any help from the people who should have been my biggest supporters. I customized the license plate to read OROV because this victory was mine alone. When I posted that photo on social media, I wasn't trying to show off. I was documenting a moment of personal triumph, sharing my joy with the friends and followers who had cheered me on throughout my journey. The caption read, "Dreams do come true when you work for them. Grateful for every step of this wild ride." The response was overwhelmingly positive. Hundreds of comments from acquaintances, clients, and internet strangers celebrating my success. My college professors shared it. My coffee shop barista hearted it. People I'd met once at networking events left encouraging messages. My family's silence was deafening. For 3 days, nothing. Then Eleanor called, her voice tight with false sweetness. "Aurora, we need to talk. There are some family matters to discuss. I expect you here tomorrow morning at 10 sharp." The tone, the demand, the assumption that I'd drop everything for their convenience after they'd ignored my wedding, my business success, my entire adult life, it made something snap inside me. "Fine," I said. "I'll be there." But this time, I had a plan. The drive to my childhood home the next morning felt like approaching a battlefield. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night researching charitable organizations and making phone calls to lawyers. By dawn, everything was in motion. The house looked exactly the same: beige siding, overgrown hedges, Patrick's insurance company car in the driveway. The front door Eleanor had never bothered to open for my achievements. The porch where I'd sat countless afternoons waiting for someone to notice I existed. I knocked instead of using my key. This wasn't my home anymore. Patrick opened the door with his usual distracted expression, like he was solving insurance equations in his head. "Aurora, come in." Eleanor and Ethan were already seated at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd eaten birthday dinner alone at 16. Ethan looked older, softer around the edges, but still carried himself with that entitled confidence that had always irritated me. Eleanor was checking her phone, barely glancing up when I entered. "Sit down, Aurora," she said, gesturing to the chair across from them. Like I was being summoned to a board meeting instead of a family discussion, I remained standing. "What did you want to talk about?" Ethan leaned forward, getting straight to business. "We saw the car, Aurora, and we know you sold your company for a lot of money." "Congratulations, by the way," Eleanor added, but the word felt hollow. "We're so proud of what you've accomplished." I almost laughed. Proud now, when there was money involved. Not proud enough to attend my wedding. Not proud enough to celebrate my first viral video, my college graduation, my business launch, or any of the smaller victories that had built up to this moment. "Thank you," I said carefully, though it would have been nice to hear that before today. Patrick shifted uncomfortably. "We're here now, aren't we? Family is family, Aurora." "Right," Ethan said, warming to his pitch. "That's exactly why we wanted to talk to you. Serena and I are looking at college options for Ella and Mason, and the costs are just astronomical. Elite schools are running over $70,000 a year now, and that's before room and board." I felt my stomach drop. Of course this was about money. "Our mortgage is also pretty substantial," Ethan continued, not noticing my expression. "The market's been crazy, and we stretched pretty far to get into the right neighborhood for the kids' schools. So we're thinking." "You're thinking I should help," I finished. "Well, yes," Eleanor said, as if it were obvious. "You've got all this money now, and family helps family. That's how things work." I stared at them. These people who had raised me but never seen me, who had shared a house with me but never made room for me in their hearts. The audacity was breathtaking. "Family helps family," I repeated slowly. "When did you help me?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Eleanor blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when exactly did this family help me? When I was working 3 jobs to pay for college because you wouldn't contribute a dime? When I started my business and could have used moral support, if not financial backing? When I got married and could have used my family there to celebrate with me?" "Now, Aurora," Patrick started, but I held up a hand. No, let me finish. You want to talk about family? Let me tell you what I remember about family. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling. Here's a photo from my 8th grade science fair. I won 2nd place. See anyone familiar in the background? They looked at the screen, confused. No, that's because you weren't there. Here's my high school graduation. Oh, wait, you left early because Ethan had a baseball game. Here's my college graduation. I swiped to another photo. Nope, you missed that too because it was the same weekend as Ethan's law school orientation. The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. And here, I said, showing them the photo that hurt the most, is my wedding day. See those empty chairs with the white ribbons? Those were for you, all of you. I held up the ceremony for 15 minutes, hoping you'd still show up. Eleanor's face had gone pale. Aurora, we explained about that business dinner. The business dinner that was actually you having a nice family meal at Romano's while your daughter got married? I said, my voice rising. I saw the Facebook posts, Mom. #family-dinner, #blessed. Really heartwarming stuff. Ethan leaned back in his chair, clearly uncomfortable with the direction this conversation had taken. Look, we're sorry about that, but now I have money, so suddenly I'm worth your time. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You've spent 34 years making it crystal clear that Ethan is the important child, the successful one, the one worth celebrating, and now you want me to fund his kid's college education? They're your nephew and niece, Eleanor said weakly. Are they? Because I've met them maybe 5 times in their entire lives. You never invite me to birthday parties or school plays or any of the family events I see posted all over social media. I'm good enough to bankroll their futures, but not good enough to be part of their present. The silence stretched until Patrick finally spoke. Aurora, you're being unreasonable. We're asking for help, not charity. What's the difference? I asked. You want my money, but not my presence. You want me to invest in children I barely know to attend colleges you never encouraged me to pursue. You want me to subsidize Ethan's lifestyle when you couldn't be bothered to attend the most important day of my life. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick manila folder, setting it on the table with a satisfying thump. You want to know what I did with my money? I said. Go ahead, open it. Eleanor picked up the folder with trembling hands and pulled out the press release I'd had my lawyer draft. Her eyes widened as she read. $15 million, I said, watching their faces change. Donated to the Children's Education Foundation of Wisconsin, specifically to fund scholarships for underprivileged kids who show promise in creative fields but lack family support. Patrick's face turned red. You gave away $15 million? To strangers, Ethan added, his voice cracking slightly. Not strangers, I corrected. To kids like me. Kids whose talents go unnoticed at home. Kids whose families are too busy celebrating their siblings to show up for their achievements. Kids who need someone to believe in them when their own parents won't. Eleanor was still staring at the press release. Aurora, this is permanent. You can't take this back. I don't want to take it back, I said firmly. This is the best thing I've ever done with money. These scholarships will change lives, create opportunities, give hope to young people who might otherwise give up on their dreams. But Ella and Mason, Ethan started, can apply for these scholarships like everyone else, I said. If they're talented and their work shows promise. Though I suspect they won't need to, given how much support and encouragement they get at home, unlike some children I could mention. The room fell completely silent. Eleanor was crying now, quiet tears that she tried to wipe away discreetly. Patrick stared at his hands. Ethan's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles working. I had a choice, I said, my voice softer now but no less firm. I could use this money to buy your love and attention, to finally get the approval I spent 34 years desperately seeking. Or I could use it to do something meaningful, to create the kind of support system I never had. I stood up, slinging my purse over my shoulder. I chose meaning over family approval, because frankly, your approval has never been worth much to me anyway. You gave it to Ethan for free, constantly, for ordinary achievements. You withheld it from me even when I did extraordinary things. So why would I pay millions of dollars for something that clearly isn't valuable to you? I walked toward the front door, then turned back for one final statement. I'm done begging for scraps of your attention. I'm done making excuses for why you can't show up for me. I'm done pretending this is a real family instead of a fan club for Ethan. Eleanor called after me as I reached the door. Aurora, wait, please, we can talk about this. We're sorry. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. You're sorry you missed out on $15 million. You're not sorry you missed out on me. The drive home was a blur of tears and relief and something that felt like freedom. My phone buzzed constant calls from Eleanor, texts from Ethan, even a voicemail from Patrick, but I didn't answer. I'd said everything I needed to say. That evening, Liam found me on our back porch, watching the sunset with a glass of wine and a strangely peaceful expression. How did it go? He asked, settling into the chair beside me. I burned it all down, I said, and told him everything. When I finished, He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached over and took my hand. "I'm proud of you," he said simply. "Even though I gave away most of our money? Especially because of that." He squeezed my fingers. "Aurora, you've spent your whole life trying to earn something from people who weren't capable of giving it. Today you stopped trying. That takes incredible courage." The next few days brought a media storm I hadn't anticipated. The local news picked up the story of my donation, then regional outlets, then national publications. "Millionaire entrepreneur gives away fortune to help underprivileged youth," ran in the Madison Journal. "From neglect to generosity, a businesswoman's inspiring choice" appeared in Forbes. My phone rang constantly with interview requests. Teachers from my old schools reached out to thank me. Strangers sent messages sharing their own stories of family disappointment and eventual triumph. The Children's Education Foundation called to tell me they'd already received over 300 scholarship applications. The most meaningful response came from a 15-year-old girl named Mia Rodriguez. She sent me a video essay about her dream of becoming a documentary filmmaker, despite her family's financial struggles and skepticism about creative careers. Her work showed genuine promise and a perspective that reminded me of my teenage self. I called her directly. "Mia, this is Aurora Vance." "Oh my God," came the breathless reply. "I can't believe you're actually calling me." "I wanted to tell you personally that you're receiving one of our first scholarships," I said. "Your video essay was extraordinary." She started crying on the phone, and I found myself tearing up too. This was what family should feel like, supporting each other's dreams, showing up for important moments, celebrating achievements together. Through friends of friends, I heard updates about my biological family's situation. Ethan had indeed lost his house, unable to keep up with the mortgage payments he'd been counting on me to cover. He and Serena had moved to a smaller place across town, and both kids had to transfer schools. Patrick and Eleanor were struggling financially too, having made retirement plans based on the assumption that their wealthy daughter would help support them. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, but I also felt no obligation to rescue them. They'd made their priorities clear over decades of choices. Now they could live with the consequences. Instead, I focused on building something beautiful. Liam and I bought a cozy house near Lake Mendota, with a view of the water and space for a home office. I started a nonprofit consulting firm, helping other entrepreneurs create sustainable giving programs. We traveled to places I'd dreamed of visiting, took cooking classes, adopted a rescue dog named Charlie who loved everyone unconditionally. Most importantly, I became a mentor. The scholarship program paired recipients with successful professionals in their chosen fields, and I personally worked with a dozen young filmmakers, watching them develop their skills, supporting them through creative challenges, celebrating their victories. It filled the space that family approval had never quite reached. Mia became like a daughter to me. When she won her first student film festival at 17, I was in the front row cheering. When she graduated valedictorian from high school, I gave the speech at her graduation party. When she got into USC's film school with a full academic scholarship in addition to the creative grant I'd funded, we both cried happy tears. "You saved my life," she told me once, and I realized she'd saved mine too. 2 years after that confrontation in my childhood kitchen, Eleanor sent me a handwritten letter. It was 3 pages long, full of apologies and explanations and promises to do better. She asked if we could meet for coffee, start over, maybe find a way back to being a family. I read the letter twice, then filed it away without responding. Some bridges, once burned, aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some relationships are too damaged by decades of neglect to ever become healthy, no matter how many apologies are offered. I'd learned that love isn't about forgiving people who hurt you repeatedly. It's about surrounding yourself with people who choose you consistently, who show up for your victories and defeats alike, who see your worth without needing proof of your value. Liam and I are planning to have children soon. They'll grow up in a house where achievements are celebrated equally, where creativity is encouraged, where every child knows they matter. They'll have grandparents who attend their school plays and birthday parties and soccer games. Liam's parents are already buying tiny clothes and planning elaborate spoiling sessions. Sometimes I drive past my old house, past the beige siding and overgrown hedges, but I don't feel the old ache anymore. That little girl who waited by the window for parents who never really saw her has grown into a woman who knows her worth isn't determined by other people's ability to recognize it. The Tesla sits in our garage, license plate still reading Aurora V, because that victory is still mine. But these days, the car represents something different than it did when I first bought it. Not a desperate attempt to get my family's attention, but a symbol of what becomes possible when you stop seeking validation from people who were never capable of providing it. Last month, I received an invitation to Ella's high school graduation. Ethan's daughter, my niece, whom I barely know, had apparently requested that I be invited. The card was addressed in Eleanor's handwriting, with a note that read, "She talks about you sometimes, says you're the coolest person in our family. We hope you can come." I smiled when I read it, genuinely touched that my niece thought well of me despite our limited relationship. But I already had plans that day Mia's college graduation, where I'd be sitting in the family section cheering for a young woman who'd become like my own daughter. I sent Ella a nice gift and a note wishing her well in college, but I didn't attend the ceremony. I'd finally learned the difference between family and relatives, between obligation and choice, between begging for love and accepting it freely given. The girl who once stood in an empty theater after her school play, scanning the audience for parents who never came, has become a woman surrounded by people who choose to show up. Not because they have to, not because I pay them to, but because they genuinely care about my happiness and success. That's what family actually looks like. And I'm grateful every day that I finally learned the difference. The scar from that $120,000 car photo will always be there the moment I realized my own parents' love was conditional on my ability to provide something they wanted. But scars, I've learned, can become sources of strength rather than shame. They remind us what we survived, what we overcame, what we refused to accept as good enough. I survived a childhood of being invisible in my own family. I overcame the desperate need for their approval. I refused to accept that their inability to love me properly was a reflection of my worth. And in the end, I built something beautiful from all that pain. A life filled with chosen family, meaningful work, and the deep satisfaction that comes from turning your wounds into wisdom, your hurt into healing for others. Some stories don't end with reconciliation and forgiveness. Some stories end with walking away from toxicity and walking toward truth, toward people who are capable of loving you the way you deserve to be loved. This is one of those stories, and despite everything it cost me, I wouldn't change the ending.